All right, we've moved over to talking about one of our favorite, very successful, very on top of the world presidential candidates. If you saw the neoliberal power hour from yesterday, you might have seen the part where I was talking about one of his interviews where he was just okay. So let's start from the beginning. So, like most people, I didn't know who O'Rourke was until the Texas Senate race. And it was really funny to think about that in retrospect because I remember seeing all of his supporters, going, "Oh, he's going to win, he's going to win, he's going to win." And the night of that election, so this Texas Senate race, the last midterm, there was a person in the comment section of I think it was TYT, and they were like, "O'Rourke is winning, he's going to pull it off." And I actually had someone that was watching the returns with me the same night, and they stated that he was going to win. And I said, look, whenever they start counting the votes, sometimes the person who is not going to win gets in the front or starts in the front of the person who will eventually be able to pull this off. And sure enough, when he lost, I was like, yeah, what were you that surprised about? Like everybody and their mother knew it would be close and that it could go one way or the other, but it wasn't that shocking. It was just really funny to watch a red state almost kick out its Republican senator. That was amusing. But I walked out of that cycle really as one of his I don't want to say ardent backers for that Senate seat because I just kind of was like, oh, I hope he beats Cruz because Cruz is so awful. But I remember actually getting some flack on like Twitter and Instagram as well for just like tweeting or posting stuff that was in support of his Senate campaign. And it was really funny to think about it in retrospect because I'm so far removed from liking him at all that it's like two different people, like two different candidates. But he walks out of that election and he thinks to himself, everybody knows who I am. I've to his credit, obtained the most votes of any candidate for any office that's a Democrat in Texas history. Um, I mean, he got more votes, and that's for that Senate seat than Hillary got for president. I don't know if that's a plus for him or a down vote for her, but either way, it was still, a really big showing. But he convinced himself because he had all these fundraisers and various people of the like who knew who he was now because that's usually what happens when you run a statewide campaign, especially in a large, huge state like Texas or over here in a CA. But he became convinced, so he had all of the little wonderful Obama people get behind him and say, "Hey, you should run for president." And I don't. I guess what's so amusing about it is that I remember there were two schools of thought. One was that he was either going to run for president or he was going to run for the other Senate seat. Um, and he actually, put a lot more speculation into the Senate seat because he stated that he was not going to run for president during his campaign for the Senate against Cruz. He outright said, "I will not run for president." Now, of course, that turned out to be a lie, but it made people think, "Hey, if this doesn't work, he's going to go for the other one." So to see him say, "Oh, you thought I was going to run for statewide office again? Man, I was just screwing with you." Um, and then go around in his campaign talking about a commitment. I mean, like if you saw the Power Hour yesterday, which I know you probably didn't, whoever it is here, he stated something to the extent of, "I'm running because I want to make a difference in the highest positioners." And I thought to myself, so if you really wanted to make a difference and you really wanted to be involved with what's going on, why don't you just run for what is a safer bet than what is like all the way at the top and clearly as we've seen by there was another candidate got in today, the 30 plus people that are currently running for president, just what convinces you that that's a more feasible thing to do than just running for a Senate seat again with high name recognition and just barely losing the last time around. Like like people don't get he's not this isn't a roast because the person hasn't been successful as politicians because they're so stupid that they will take something that they could have easily used to their advantage, which was being known in that state and being, someone that people were fully aware of, and just deciding, oh no, I'm going to say screw that, and decide to, you know, go all the way to the top. Like, it's weird, and people know that's strange. And it would have been weird even if he had won that Senate seat. It actually would have made he would have basically been doing what Harris has done, where she won her Senate seat. Was that 2016? We're like halfway through her term, but within like 6 or 7 months, she was going to meet donors for a 2020 presidential bid. Like, just they get these offices and they try to get something higher. Like, I hate that so much, and they're all copying off of Obama with that, where they saw he could do it, so now they all think it's going to happen with them. They actually had an article that came out about 4 or 5 years ago during the last election cycle, and it was Rand, it was Rubio, and it was Cruz, who all were trying to copy uh, the formula that Obama used to win the Democratic primary. So they were trying to replicate that idea for themselves in the Republican primary, and you saw how that turned out. Um, Jesus, they I love how they spend year after year rebuking the president of the opposing party, but then you're trying to use his tactics to get into the same office. Like, I think that's so funny. It's this nice little brand of irony. But look, so in between this run for Senate and president, um, O'Rourke gets talked about on TYT, and they do this whole expose. And I think the video's original name was O'Rourke is a fraud. Then they changed it to something else really, really quickly. And I remember in the comment section, someone, commenting on the title was like, and I usually don't like when people comment on titles, because I think when you have like a huge video in front of you, if you're only talking about the title, it kind of seems like you're more interested in, reading what it's called versus what's actually in it. But whatever, the person said, you guys didn't waste any time getting to the point, and they were talking about his support from the fossil fuel companies, voting to deregulate banks, and this is in direct contrast with the progressive positions that he seemed to espouse during his campaign. And it was really even more somewhat ironic, because I remember TYT's interview with him when Jank interviewed him, and I think it was like March of 2 years ago, and he was talking about supporting single payer. He was criticizing Cruz for immediately running for president after becoming senator, because Cruz was going to Iowa as early as 2013. His first year in the Senate, he was touring around and whatnot. And you got to understand that comment in particular is ironic to me, because there are people who actually thought that if O'Rourke won that Senate seat, he would have ran for president anyway, which means he would have literally done the exact same thing that Cruz did, except arguably a little bit quicker. Because remember, the whole thing is you want a senator that's there to be your senator and to, like, actually be committed to serving that position, not some idiot that's going to run for president, after being in a couple of news articles and, championing really no issues at all, but just being kind of associated with modern, ideology of whatever party they're from. So to see him go and say, I'm so sick of this senator who travels around, goes to all these different presidential, early primary states, but then I would have done the same thing. It's just, it's really funny. But watching that interview after he jumped into the presidential race, that's wow, 2 whole years. It's like two different people, because he's talking progressive in that, and then during his campaign, this has been something that other people have pointed out. He doesn't give specifics. It's the same fluffy. What's a good example of what I'm talking about? So I think if memory serves correct, he went from saying I support single payer or Medicare for all to I support a version that eventually leads to, just like the nuanced stuff. It's like when I said, if you ask me what is my policy on criminal justice, I would say end the drug war, legalize prostitution, just stuff like that, specifics, whether you agreed with it or not. If you ask him, he'll go, "Well, I think we need criminal justice reform." It's like, okay, what are you talking about? Are you what like he'll be the first one to say the system is against people of minority or people of color, whatever, which again, not disagreeing with, but what exactly do you intend to do to make any tangible difference? And that's kind of the problem with a lot of these candidates, not just him, but he's one of the biggest offenders. And his campaign is more known for flailing his arms around during it's I think it's early days or whatever, and also a couple of stupid comments he made here and there, like when he was in Iowa and he said that his wife was at home taking care of the kid. What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with you trying to appeal to voters out here? But it's all part of that scheme of trying to get people to love you over your personality versus your policies, which he thought could work, and he's kind of on the opposite end of it. What I love is that we still have a media that treats him like he's a serious candidate. So they actually, CNN reported when he criticized Biden for being, like this, go basically a nostalgia for the Obama era, and was talking about how he had problems before Trump. And I gave him credit because those are two true comments. But see what he likes to do, and this is another thing with these Democrats, and this is, understand, I'm not attempting to say that if someone is reluctant to critique their own party, it's like they're evil, because I get it. You want to make sure you get the voters, you want to make sure that you're able to appeal to the same base. But you have to understand that voters are not, hopefully anyway, are not, certainly not me, are not snowflakes that get offended in the place of the politicians they voted for. So basically, if either of the two people in here vote for, I don't know, somebody from governor, and then that same governor 2 years later does something that earns the ire of a person who's running to succeed them as governor, and they go, "Oh, this is stupid because yada yada yada." The voters are not going to think, "Hey, I voted for that person who did that. Are you calling me stupid?" Because it's not them. Like the only supporters of anybody I've seen get offended over you know policy getting critiqued are usually like they're not even they're those kind of people. It's like the cold stuff. Like we've talked about a couple of Trump supporters and whatnot, but it goes beyond that, where like you actually have people who identify as Democrats that will say, "I'm offended when Sanders or anyone else criticizes the party," and they have actually, what I love about them is they'll take this like weird kind of approach where they want people to support their candidates, but then they're over there throwing nukes on places like Twitter and Instagram, especially Twitter. That is, we need our back to the source sequel soon. It's a little envoy. So during his campaign, he's hired and fired people. He hired, it's someone that was connected to Ralph Northam, and it was really weird because I said to myself, if you've got a governor or a politician who is, I mean, let's call it what it is. Outside of Virginia, he's mostly known for that stupid picture, from that yearbook, the one that everyone was losing their minds over in February. It's like, why would you hire someone that's affiliated with that person? Like, if I found out my campaign hired the worker or one of the primary workers for a person who was literally mainly known outside of their state for some stupid yearbook photo that offended a bunch of people, I'd be embarrassed. But he has no shame, so he's fine with doing that. He actually, has had something else. I think the biggest splash his campaign made was on its first day, because he supposedly raised more than anybody else, and it was really weird because one of the things that people quickly caught note of was that they wouldn't put out the number of donors. Like that was kind of a thing where, oh, you can raise, I'm sure, millions of dollars, but is that going to come from regular people, or the various big executives of these companies? What the hell, basically. And when he didn't put out the donors, people said, "Hey, how do we know he didn't just reverse his pledge to not accept PAC money and you know go around and pour out for the companies again?" And sure enough, we I don't think we ever received the exact number of people. I know that we did find out The average contribution was like 40 something bucks. But again, that still doesn't tell us where or, what number of people actually donated. Because you can have someone who gives 20 and then you can have someone that gives 2,000. So it's not, it's still really, it's skewed basically. Envoy's feeling really upset. I haven't said hello back to him. I'm so angry at him for not watching either of the super reviews I did. I tried to bring him up to speed in that chat yesterday. Um, what else is there to mention about this character? I've never seen someone like barely win lose an election, and then instead of running for that again, they go and do something even grander and I can't get over those Lincoln comparisons. They were like, who else lost a Senate election, but then ran for president 2 years later? Lincoln. I was like, yeah, but Lincoln didn't run the field of what was it, 20 other Republicans, like, some huge, large group of people, and then like not have any policy specifics. And it was a lot harder because, to my knowledge, the only things O'Rourke did during his Senate campaign that pissed me off were there were two of them. He didn't criticize Cruz that much. I'm sorry, but if someone has a 6-year record of really terrible votes, I'm going to articulate what they are. And it's not about trying to tear the person down. It's about saying to the states of Texas in this hypothetical, you can do better than someone that supports all of these different, military conflicts. Because to my knowledge, whereas let me turn this off. Hold on. That's that website. That's that cancerous website notifying me of stuff. But to my knowledge, unlike Rand or Mike Lee, in the Senate, libertarians who I don't agree with on social issues, but they oppose most of these conflicts overseas. Cruz hasn't opposed any of them, as far as I'm aware. He hasn't opposed Iraq or Libya or Yemen or Syria or Somalia or Pakistan or Afghanistan. Like, I've never seen him say that he was opposed to any of those. So for O'Rourke to not bring that up, especially when this is the same, like, if you saw and I'm gonna read your comments on Envoy, but if you saw the first debate between Cruz and O'Rourke, Cruz attacked O'Rourke as a socialist, and they like to say that they're all trying to take your dollars and do whatever with them. But then you're the same person who called him that and said, like, tried to imply this horrible stuff, is the same person who voted for the 717 billion military budget. It's like, dude, you don't think that could have been used toward your state or the people that live there? All right. Do you think America will ever be truly rid of these military conflicts? Just wash their hands and turn away? One of two things is either going to happen. We're either going to get to a point where enough people, because see, the thing about these conflicts, and I don't mean to deviate, but just to kind of like answer that, they're not at a point where it's causing people to lose their minds. Like when we had the draft with Vietnam, where they were, sending all these different kids over there to get blown to pieces. The reason people were pissed off wasn't because the U.S. military was doing horrible things to those poor Vietnamese. It was because their own flesh and blood was getting expunged and destroyed overseas. It personally affected them because it was someone they cared about. So unless more than, because remember, we only have 1%. I think it's less than 1% of U.S. citizens that are in the military. Unless that number balloons up to like 20 or 30%, and people are just like seeing the ramifications even more, you're not going to get the public pressure to get out of these. And the other thing you have to worry about, Envoy, is that even if we ended the 7 that we're in now, we could just as easily get started in some more. There was a report, I think it was like 2 or 3 days ago, that Trump was about to strike Iran for, downing some surveillance jet or whatever that thing was, boat, something like that. So my answer is maybe, but I it's not a high probability. It's the same thing with single payer. It could happen, but it won't happen if we're stuck. If the current people who are in office are still in office. Like you have to get rid of too many of them, I think, to just be able to even have a feasible chance of passing that. It's just like when the Senate voted to block the and I did a video about this. They voted to block the Saudi arms sale. If it was, I don't know if you saw it on, but it was seven Republicans and all the Democrats, and even in having a majority, you're still going to get a veto, and they still probably won't be able to block it because it's only like seven or eight, the same couple of Republicans I checked that just keep opposing it. No other ones want to come over. No one wants to say, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't do this." Like literally, in all of the votes between like the last 7 or 8 months having to do with Saudi Arabia and Yemen, I've only seen one Republican swap over to supporting anything anti-Saudi Arabia government or Saudi Arabia's government. That's Lindsey Graham, of all people. I guess that's actually a blessing rather than any 5 to 10% of citizens in the military. Well, Envoy, that's why the transgender ban was so stupid because, let's pretend you're not a fan of LGBT, whatever. You're not going to tell me it makes sense to lower the number of people who can get into the military when you have less than 1% of your population willing to even go there in the first place. That's stupid. And it doesn't take some, bleeding heart supporter of, these different groups' rights to realize that. I mean, think about it, Envoy. If you're running a business and only less than 1% of people are qualified to, let's say, to perform the task, and then you say, oh, well, I don't want any that are transgender. You're limiting your business because you already have a small supply of people who can even do this or are willing to do this rather, and you're going to basically say to them, I'm going to cut you down even further just because I have a personal problem with your crap. It's just really stupid. It was a dumb policy, but he did it to appeal those evangelicals. Very true. It seems like they're recruiting less and less people. Yeah, well, I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that there's really no benefit to any of this stuff. Like between the PTSD and the fact that was it 27% of the homeless are veterans, so they come back, they survive these wars and they get treated like dirt by their own people. It's stuff that I really think that most people are catching on to now. It's good. I'm glad. Because again, if they don't have any soldiers to send over there, they can't fight these conflicts. It's just like when Hannity was doing a segment on Fox about the soldiers that were like basically he was saying that Trump could bomb Iran over and over and that would be it. It's like no, we're going to send soldiers over there. There's been no conflict where we just bomb. We don't have any casualties from our own, you know, denizens. No, so that's incorrect. I think that's due to the advancement of the technological where people are working has industrial type jobs. It's more so working in office and whatnot. Yeah, probably. So another theory that someone presented to me about O'Rourke's campaign was that he was meant to basically he got abandoned for Harris after the donors showed the slightest interest in him. And after her campaign started to kind of plummet, and it's been plummeting, like, it's I had a joke. I said first it was Harris going up, then it was uh this stupid mayor going up, now it's Warren, and then the other two are going down. So if you look at pretty much like in her own state, Harris is in like fourth place. So she's really doing very poorly. But the theory was that they had picked O'Rourke to get in because they saw that she wasn't appealing to enough people. And it's been the same exact thing of just fall, 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 fall. And the most disturbing part is that I know what goes through the heads of these candidates, and I know this because I've seen enough of them talk about these election cycles to get how they think. You can talk to O'Rourke, you can talk to Harris, you can talk to Booker, you can talk to Gilbert, you can talk to whoever the hell you want. They're all under the same impression that because it's only June, and they have months to reclaim voters or appeal to voters that this is too early to call. That's why you won't see any of them drop out until like November or October or August, not even August, maybe like just very, very, late in this year, because they have to spend month after month polling at 1% and 2% to figure out people just don't want them. How do you use American politics in America in terms of society after the Trump era? Oh, how do I see it? Um, no, we're going into the O'Rourke era because O'Rourke is going to win this presidential election and then he's going to be President O'Rourke. Yeah. Um, the only thing I think he really is going to leave any impact on is just people now who don't have any experience with being in office are going to be tempted more and more to do it, because they're going to figure, well, hell, if you can become president, without being in any other position, why the hell can't you be representative or senator or governor, in the same vein? And I'm glad, because I don't have, like, I'm not one of these people that has the standards of, like, I've seen people who say that they want Biden because he has experience. I don't care, because I've seen that person's record. I'm not impressed. He could have been in there for 80 years and I still wouldn't have voted for him. So I'm glad that at least, even though I think it kind of has. So representatives didn't really run for president. Like, they don't usually do that. So to see, let's see, we got Swalwell, got Moulton, Gabbard, just to see them, O'Rourke, uh, running instead of trying to go for the Senate or something higher before. They just decide like that's all stuff that I picture as having been inspired to some extent by what happened with Trump. And another thing I said that's true, Envoy, is that name recognition is a big part of it. So, like how everybody knew who Trump was before the cycle started, it's really hard to get people to know the names of these candidates. It seems like you can go all over the country and they still don't know who you are. I don't know why they don't just do it, like because most of these states usually, like I, especially Iowa and New Hampshire, they have enough Democrats there to where it makes sense to go there and be like, hey, my name is, you know, whoever from New York. How are you? Just they're really, a lot of these people that are running, you can tell they didn't plan this 2 or 3 years ago. Because if I was, I would, actually tour the entire country as a way of getting my name out there. But that's how stupid they are. So that, and it shows because their campaigns are all failing. I think we may see some more celebrities get into politics. Yeah, and people are going to vote for them just because of what their names are, which is really disturbing. And it all goes back to what I was saying about how it feels like people, like, what I think is really funny. Any office other than president, it seems like no one cares about. And it's literally every office other than president that I think people have decent chances of winning more often than not. With usually the only thing that caused me to abstain being if they're in a red or blue state and they're running as the respective opposite party. That's why with O'Rourke, I couldn't, like, for the life of me, I don't get how you can get the most votes of any member of your party in a state's history for any office, right? And then decide to not try to get that office a few years later. Like, I don't like, it's just, that's how stupid I think he is, because it makes no sense to me. I'm going to, instead of running for what is a very, very likely possibility that I can win in my state, and then, serve in that position for 6, 12 years, whatever amount of time I want to do before becoming president or running for president, I'm going to forego that and stay, chasing this dream that 30 other people are going after, or even more. I was just going to bring it up. It's funny how everyone hails the presidential politics as the be all and the be all end all. It is the most important job in this country, but there's other positions in politics, and you'll have a better chance of winning. So that's why I said that the only, if I was to even bother getting involved in this, I would run for the House. And I really don't even like the House that much. I much prefer the Senate, but between the dinosaur and the the prophet presidential candidate, I'm not exactly too sure of my chances of ousting either one of them because it's just it would be difficult without the name recognition. I think a House seat is a lot easier to do than the other way around. And it's made even more amusing by the fact that because people only pay attention to the presidential elections, that means people in your own state won't even know who all the candidates are. But it's like you could literally tour the entire state and it wouldn't matter. Like I remember the chick that TYT had, I guess, propped up for the Senate seat against Feinstein. She boasted about having the most active group of people that were, supporting her, volunteers and whatnot. And I all that just to get 2%. And to give her credit, there were 30 people in that primary. Point is, she did all this stuff right just to get 2% of the vote. Envoy says, do you think another issue of citizens in general is the lack of focus on local elections? We make a big deal of presidential elections, but not local. Do people act like local elections don't even exist? I can't even name how many people don't know who the governor is. They don't know who the lieutenant governor is. They don't know who the senators are. Like, forget the representative. They don't know who these like statewide officials are, and it's crazy. I get not knowing the treasurer. I get not knowing the secretary of state, whatever. But just like basic politicians, there's like who? Oh, I actually had a person I was talking to, and I told him, I bet I'm willing to bet my entire sack that 95% of Americans couldn't name 20 senators unless you let them go on Google or Wikipedia or something. Like just walk up to anybody and say, "Hey, name me a fifth of the Senate," and I guarantee you they couldn't. Hell, I would even wager that it'd probably be like 99% couldn't name 15 senators that had been in office before they were born, like that served in maybe like the last 50 years. I guarantee you. People don't care. I think it comes down to the media, also the news in general. Senators are featured, even though I struggle naming them. Oh, senators aren't featured, even I struggle naming them. No, look, I'll be the first one to admit there are a whole bunch of them that just are not that significant and don't really mean anything. But at the same token, I think that if you live in a state, you should know the two that represent you. Simple as that. Doesn't mean that I like them, doesn't mean that you think they're good or anything like that. It's just these are the people that are in this high profile position. If we're talking about, say, Feinstein, she's going to be there for another 6 years. So, it's, you get my point. I'm just saying that people should at least know who they are, like, be able to name them. And then, like the big ones like Sanders or McConnell or something or Schumer. Like, I think maybe I could settle if it was kept up to the Senate majority and minority leader because they're the leader of their party in the Senate, and then also the two that represent your state. I can maybe give that a pass. You can understand, where my thing is that we have literally what, six of them running for president right now? No, seven. Let's see, it's Sanders, it's Booker, it's Warren, Gillibrand, Harris, Cloud Bootjar, and what's the other one? Bennett. So, like because there's being featured more by the media as presidential candidates, it's a lot harder for me to just go, "Oh, I understand why you don't know who this person that is being talked about more nowadays is, actually someone to notice." I do like that. If O'Rourke had won, we would be saying 8, but he didn't, so we got to limit our numbers. When I think of the weapons deal with Saudi Arabia and other countries, and the controversy arises to how much money is in the game with U.S. and its amount of debt. I wonder what the future holds. I don't see the Republicans opposing it. Well, of course they don't. Their defense contractor buddies are going to keep, like we've been over this, that they have financial ties to these other countries and to these groups. That's why you have these Republicans who actually are not dumb. Who, if someone says, "I don't like Netanyahu and the Israeli government," you're anti-Semitic. They don't say that because they actually think you are. They're saying it because they've been paid by their APAC overlords to divulge that kind of nonsense. Because I'm gonna tell you something. Talk to regular people who don't follow this stuff and just say, "I have a problem with the Israeli government." 9 times out of 10, I haven't been called anti-Semitic. Like when you talk to regular people who don't follow this stuff, don't listen to any of these politicians, and you just say, "I don't like the Israeli government because of how they treat Palestinians, because of human rights violations." No one starts losing their mind. What is this? Some Oh, well, I'll say hello. You pull out the red carpet. But yeah, regular people don't act that way. And that's what makes politics dirty, the buzzwords like anti-Semitic being thrown around. Well, that's my point, that like during that Senate race, Cruz kept calling O'Rourke a socialist as O'Rourke was moderating, or what they call moderating his position, act more like a closet Republican. And it's like he's doing that because he knows that word is negative, in its connotation about people who are left leaning. And it's basically his own version of the Red Scare. You're a socialist. It's kind of like how when you go online and you see people who don't like what a guy says about a chick, so they accuse him of being a virgin. It's like they know that that's embarrassing, and they know that the older someone gets, the more looked down upon their status as that will be. So they call them that to get them freaked out and to cause hysteria and try to shame them. What else is notable about Rourke? Another thing that kind of is, again, in his defense, that pissed me off was that they kept bringing up the DUI arrest that he had from like 20 plus years ago. It's like, really, this is significant. This is how we're going to spend this cycle. And I think he wrote some article about how hot he thought some chick was, and they tried to put that out against him during the that election cycle. It's just weird. They will slander you with everything now. Oh, and then Cruz had that ad where he was playing the clips of O'Rourke swearing during his live streams or when he was traveling. It's like, who cares? People curse. Don't act like just because you haven't been calling the hot mic doing it that you don't either you or your wife or someone that you are closely affiliated with don't do it. That's what I'm saying, like that moral high ground, grandstanding crap. Like when Cruz said that O'Rourke wanted to ban barbecue, just weird stuff like that that doesn't have to do with actually showing you, making the case of why this candidate is better than the other. And then what's screwed up is when you realize that they get in there and they're just one vote in a sea of 100. Oh man. Another thing I thought was really funny is that you actually have a let's see, Envoy says politics is built on that grandstanding, Justin, which is why I shy away from it. Too much feelings, not enough facts. Yeah, they go out of their way to like create these disparaging messages that are meant to, like, all this stuff about family values is so, it's irrelevant to actually discussing a candidate's policies or positions. The only time they use that stuff is when they're trying to make you feel bad because you're not opposed to abortion rights. I already said I really am sick of these social issues clogging up everything else, because what they try to do is pretend like we're not bombing all these different countries, which is why they sit up there and they start going on about, I'm for protecting an unborn life, and I want to make sure that the Americans who come here legally are, you know, given first benefits or whatever. Just they inflate those issues as a means not of bringing importance to them, because people already talk about them all the time, of obfuscating from other things that are going on. Like I remember when Trump announced he was pulling out of Syria, the I'll respond to your comment in a moment. Pronounce your name, Afro. But when Trump announced he was pulling out of Syria, all these Republicans were losing their minds. Rubio lost his mind. Cotton lost his mind. That's that goofy one from. Well, I'll explain who that is. I think you, Afro, probably already might know who that is, but he's very relevant to the Iran thing. But Cruz stayed completely silent for the whole time it was going over. He let the whole thing just breeze right by. Now you tell me that a politician who is not at least somewhat sophisticated is like what, like no one could get how deceitful that was, that this major foreign policy announcement occurs, and for days you just don't say anything about it. And he did that because he didn't want to piss off any of the Trump supporters. He kept his mouth closed because he knew he was going to try to court them later on if he runs for president again. All right, responding to, do you think we are going to war with Iran? Uh, Probably. I'm surprised it hasn't started sooner. They pulled out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action last year, and I'm shocked that they didn't try to bomb it immediately right after, because Bolton actually has a speech from I think 2 years ago where he was talking about wanting regime change in Iran this year. So it's a high probability. Hell, he's the same person that wants to mess with Venezuela and North Korea. We literally could have 10 um, ongoing military conflicts by the end of this. That's how crazy this has gotten. Only reason I don't just immediately say yes is because of how far we're, like, how it's been this long and we're still not involved in any new ones. But it could still, not going to close the door on it completely. I guess that goes to show how selfish Americans can be. Are nothing wild, and now the foreign policies are being ignored, like you always bring up. Yeah, I mean, like I said, unless it's happening to them, they don't care. That's why Vietnam was such a big deal. Not because we did horrible things and murdered innocent children and women and men and all these other this country. It was because our own got blown to pieces, and they went, "Oh my God, I feel so terrible." And I'm not saying they shouldn't, but it's really disturbing. You can't have compassion for someone unless they live on U.S. soil. Like, think of how insane you are for just having that position. You only care if someone dies, provided it's like in the same ground or in the same country, because some water distances you or whatever. I actually had a person who tried to say that I was unconcerned with, basically they are from another country, and they don't, like, their only reason they care about this other country is because they're from there. But they were like trying to tell me about how the US should care about it. Like, man, look, every single time we do that, all we do is bomb and get our own soldiers killed, so I'm good. Okay, that's terrifying. I'm concerned with a war with Iran and led to a large global conflict. Are they allied with Russia? Let me see. I don't think so, but I'll look it up. By the way, in case you forgot, Envoy, Russia was against the coup in Venezuela, and I was saying like how that's like basically all those RussiaGate people don't want to admit that because it pokes a hole in their narrative. Russia accused the United States on Friday of deliberately stoking dangerous tensions around Iran and pushing the situation to the brink of war. the RIA news agency reported Deputy Foreign Minister Sergey. Oh, okay, yeah. So they're opposed to this apparently. Let's see. Oh, they got that stupid. I'm gonna get away from him. I don't like him. They were talking about some news conference that Bolton had with somebody on Monday. I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to read that rather. Every time I see that, man, I just think of carnage and death. I like how that we went from talking about O'Rourke to talking about all this other stuff that, and then the sad thing is he's a candidate who literally, just is kind of when I guess here's my thing. When I express some kind of attempt at knowledge of issues that are international and domestic, it's really, really creepy that I feel like in this one stream you've heard more about my position on these international issues than you've heard with him his whole campaign. Like I've heard him one time mention Iran. I think I might have just bare minimum, any issue with Russia alongside all the other issues, primarily with the Middle East countries, is the last thing America needs. Well, that's my point. That they don't seem to be in favor of messing with Iran. So you're not going to hear that get mentioned because it pokes a hole in the RussiaGate conspiracy theory. They don't want to believe that Putin could actually not want to agree with Trump on everything. They're creeped out. Oh, but look, I think we've touched a lot of stuff. Um, O'Rourke is a clown who could have been a senator next year and decided to instead be a failed Senate and presidential candidate. Uh, what else is there to say? He's going to have a legacy of being. Oh, here comes our 11th hour ranger. Right as I'm getting ready to end. Hello, how are you today? I'm pleased to make your acquaintance. Hey, for anyone that saw Endgame, James is Captain Marvel. He's in there for like 5 minutes or 3 minutes out of that whole 3 hour film. And I was so happy to find that they cut her part out. That was the best news all year. Best movie news anyway, because I can't stand that character, that actress, or anything relating to her. It's terrific. I think I mentioned that TYT did a video about the what they called the it's like the misogynist edit of Endgame, and all they did was cut out Captain Marvel, and then they were trying to say people were sexist for not liking her because they apparently the issue is with her character strength rather than her just being a crappy Mary Sue, but whatever. It was funny because like they leave all these chicks in this movie alone except for that one, but then they're misogynist. Like they cut one person out that's misogynist. Make no sense. But look, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Um, TYT can go. Oh, you can't say that on here. This is a family friendly event Envoy. You don't even know how old James is. He could be 10 or 11, and you're swearing in front of him, trying to be so offensive. And don't hurt his ears with that. Don't hurt his eyes with that filth you tried to type in the comments section using those bad words. Or do we have to play the outro? The one that I think Envoy knows what outro I'm talking about. I should do. I should have like a joke where somebody uses a swear word in the stream, and then be like, "Oh, we don't appreciate swear words here," and then they have that thing go off in the background. Yeah, I stopped. I didn't. I don't use that as much anymore because I prefer that it be kept a genuine surprise. Like I don't want it to just be commonly associated with my stuff. I'll tell you what. I'll do it. I'll do it on the Monday one if you show up for it. We played for you. Yeah, that was epic. It was a full minute of just the theme playing. and no kind of interaction from me. I was just sitting there. I was just waiting. Makes it even more epic when I finally show up. Trying to turn this channel with one hand is so difficult. So that's the running theme with all these shows. They put a bunch of crap on here. But look, his campaign is failing. His Senate campaign failed. His House of Representatives career was a disaster. Just a really crappy politician. Like even with someone like Harris, who I don't like, at the very least, you get someone that's attempting to appear progressive or, like not seem to be a complete corporate sellout. Uh, even though we know the reality of the situation. With him, he literally is just garbage all around. Like every single thing he's done as a public figure, with I don't think any exception has been trash. And when we need, I know that with that military budget, I don't think he, I think he voted for it. Yeah, he voted for it. So it's Robert. Oh yeah, that's one of the things they love to do, where they bring up on Twitter. All they would do is bring up his real, like his you know full name or whatever. They would just keep writing Robert Francis, Robert Francis. It's like, what is that supposed to do? If you say his name enough times, it's gonna just like fade away. I think she's overrated. I think that she has been covered by the media so much for winning one election that it's gotten kind of annoying at this point. Like I don't have a problem with her per se. It's just when I think of progressive, at least members of the House, I think of Rokan, I think of Tulsi, and I just don't see them getting mentioned anywhere near as much as AOC does. And one of them's running for president, and they're just completely sidelined, so they can keep on talking about her every day. And I'm not alone. Like that opinion of mine is not crazy. Like Fox covered AOC more than literally every single presidential candidate except for Warren. She's even popular among a lot of people I know. Oh, she's super popular. Yeah, if you personally, as far as House progressives go, I prefer Ro he's done, like I feel like if he got covered as much as she does, which he doesn't nearly anywhere near as much. I don't even think Sanders gets covered as much as she does, but at the very least, if he did, it would be someone that I think deserves it, because he actually has multiple things in his record I could bring up and say that he's been behind. So it is what it is. But yeah, thank you for showing up. I appreciate it. I'll do a stream tomorrow. I don't know what the topic's going to be. We'll figure it out. Have a good day.